So I've already done a full feature-length video on all the elegant simplicity and multifunctionality you can get from a good stick. But what about if you could add to your stick's repertoire by combining a simple pocket slingshot with some wood you found in the forest and some junk in your shed and make a staff slingshot crossbow thing? Well, stay tuned and I'll show you what I came up with. Hi folks, Tom Fandabi Dozi, thanks for tuning in. So before I show you exactly what I made, I thought I'd better explain my thinking behind it. So basically, I was out for a walk one day in my nearby woods, and of course I always take one of my trusty sticks with me, just so happened to be my Japanese Joe staff. But another thing I sometimes carry is a wee pocket slingshot, just a standard, inexpensive pocket slingshot. But you know, I'm not the best shot with it, and actually, you know, it takes quite a lot of practice to get accurate shooting a slingshot instinctively. So I thought, man, wouldn't it be really cool if I could make some sort of slingshot crossbow thing, you know, something you can actually look down and aim. And you know, if you've ever seen the Slingshot channel, that guy has come up with some really awesome slingshot crossbow designs, you know, very effective ones. But you know, they're usually made out of a long piece of wood, and you know, you can't really put it inside a backpack, and you certainly can't put it in your pocket. So I was like, well, what else could I use? But then, you know, I'm always got my staff on me. It's a long bit of wood. This particular one is made out of solid oak. I could definitely, you know, it could definitely put up with some punishment. So it got me thinking, what about if I could use the fork and bands from my pocket slingshot and make just a few small items that you could fit in your pocket that could attach onto the staff and make a somewhat effective slingshot crossbow thing. Now, I did have some limitations and parameters for the design. First of all, we're still in lockdown. All the DIY shops are closed, so I couldn't exactly buy the optimal things to make this. And also, you know, as I said, I wanted the parts to be small, that you could fit in your backpack or fit in your pocket ideally. And also, I didn't want to modify my staff at all. I didn't want to drill any holes in it or put bolts in it or anything. So those are my parameters. So bearing that in mind, I'll show you what I came up with. Let's start with the fork. So this is off my pocket slingshot. I think the make itself, it's one of the Black Widows. I'm not sure exactly what model, but the real advantage to this is that you can remove this metal fork from the handle just with 3 screws using, you know, your penknife or multi-tool. And the advantage to this is that I can fairly quickly change between if I want a pocket slingshot or I can, you know, take this fork out and use it for this design. Now, I have modified the pouch a little bit so that it works for this system, but I'll cover that in a little bit. So for presuming that you're carrying your pocket slingshot and you've got your staff on you anyway, these 3 components are all else you need to turn your staff into a slingshot crossbow, and they're all made from the same branch of an ash tree. So this first part is the fork socket, and I've designed it so that it slips on top of the staff and that the fork of the slingshot is inserted into this part. I managed to luckily found a drill bit that was exactly 25 millimeters, so this fits very, very snugly on top of the staff. I then managed to work out what sort of diameter was perfect for the fork of the slingshot to fit snugly in. And then finally, I just tried to reinforce it as best I could, because there is quite a lot of strain on this part of the mechanism just from the bands being pulled back. So the second part I'm going to call the trigger housing, for lack of a better word. And this and the trigger itself are based off a fairly common medieval sort of style crossbow trigger. So basically I got a part of the ash tree that had a side branch coming in. I then hollowed out along the length of it so that it could fit and sort of hug the top of the staff, and then glued in some, this is bicycle inner tubing. So this rubber helps grip the staff and stops this from sliding backwards and forwards. The straps that attach it to the staff are unfortunately not very pretty. You know, I put a lot of effort into the woodwork, sanding it, oiling it, making it look nice, but it came to the straps and, you know, kind of lost some beauty points there. But it's basically, again, some bicycle inner tubing. I've got some screws This one's a little bolt and some old rubber bands that I found. So not all that pretty, but as I'll show you later on, it does grip the staff surprisingly well, and it can withstand the pull of the bands. So it doesn't look nice, but it's working so far. I'll discuss some ideas of how I can optimize this later on. And the final piece is the trigger lever. Again, made from the same branch as everything else. This circular part is made from a cross section of the branch, and then I just carved this flatter plank to act as the lever. And that's glued together with epoxy resin. I've then drilled a hole through the circular part and put some paracord through it, and this is going to act as the hinge to allow the lever to pivot. I've also, again, got some good old bicycle inner tubing, and that's put some tension on it, allowing it to keep it in place and also grips the staff. Now, I originally wanted to attach the lever and trigger housing together so they're all one piece, but it just didn't turn out that way. I just couldn't quite do it. So they've turned out into two different pieces, but they're still very small and easy to pack. So let's stick them together and I'll show you how it works. So get the fork from your pocket slingshot and your fork socket. I'm going to put it in place, and I've worked out that just as the bottom of the fork starts to appear, that seems to be a good place for it to sit. Grab your staff, sit it on top. As I said, it's quite a tight fit. You push down quite hard for it to sit in place. And there it is. Next, get your trigger housing. Now, you can place this anywhere along the staff. Obviously, the closer you are to the fork, the less power you're going to get, but you know, if you're just getting a bit of practice, that's okay. And the further away you are, then the more pull the bands you're getting and the more power you're going to get. So I kind of, if I'm sort of holding it like a rifle, I kind of like it around here as if like where the trigger would be on a rifle. So I would sit that around there, make sure it's lined up. And these first set of bands is, again, not very pretty. Literally just some screws. I've blunted them off so they're not too sharp. And I've got some holes on the other side of the rubber, so you can pull it tight, line up the holes, and place them over the screws, like that. I've got a spike on the bottom of my staff at the moment. It's not really a problem for shooting it, but I can easily take this off just with a multi-tool. Anyway, so the front of the trigger housing, I've got a little nut and bolt, so I can take off that nut. And I've got another little hole for the bolt to come through, which I can then put the nut on top to stop it coming undone. And finally, your trigger lever. I've just done it so you can slip it over the end. I pull the rubber and the paracord for the trigger lever quite far front like that, and that keeps the trigger pushing against this part of the trigger housing. So just make sure it's lined up with the bands. Now, although it looks pretty shoddy, this rubber strapping, it actually does hold it really well, and because it's rubber, it grips the staff. What I've done to the slingshot pouch, I basically got two loops of cord. The cords sit in between the pouch like that, and it means you can put the ball bearing in between them and it holds the ball quite well. Let's try shoot it. Put on some safety glasses just because I don't completely trust this thing yet. So you just stick it on the ground, put your big toes over the fork, lever it up, and place it on top, just like that. So the cord from the pouch is sitting on this part of the lever. And the ammunition I'm using is 8mm ball bearings, and you can push the ball bearing so it sits quite snugly in between those two bits of cord. You can then bring up to your shoulder, aim, and shoot. And again, it's cocked. You can see the string attached to the pouch is over the notch on the trigger housing. Get your ball bearing, place it into the pouch, pushing down on the lever to release your shot. How well does this thing actually shoot? Well, at the moment, not all that consistently. Sometimes, you know, it's shooting quite powerfully, quite accurate, I'm happy with it, and sometimes literally the ball bearing's like bloop, and this falls a few meters. So not really sure what I'm doing wrong. This is sort of one of the first rubber-based weapons I've ever made. Maybe I need to ask the guy from the Slingshot channel, get his advice. So what sort of other ways could I optimize it? Well, as I said before, although the wood is really pretty, it's probably better to make it out of something sturdier like metal. This attachment system is the main thing I'm not that happy about. Just rubber bands. I mean, it works, it does the job, but this won't last very long if you're shooting this regularly, and it's not the sturdiest thing. So the next sort of best design I've thought of is that you would have another piece of wood that would basically clamp from the underside, and you could screw or bolt in from there. So it would basically be like two halves of a branch that would sandwich the staff from either end. Again, you could play around for ages with different size of pouch, of ammunition, different band strengths. This is the black bands, which I think are the second most powerful. I think you can get silver after this. So yeah, tons to play around with. I'm probably going to be working on it, tuning it for a while, trying to perfect it. But at the moment, I'm fairly happy with it, considering it's just made out of a branch from an ash tree, some bits of rubber, and my pocket slingshot. So thanks for watching, folks. I had a lot of fun making this. Hope you enjoyed it. If anyone's interested in minimalist footwear, being light on your feet, then go check out the company Freet. They're still doing a 10% discount for all you guys if you use this code, so go check that out. Huge thanks to all my patrons. If you want to help support the channel, become a patron. I'll be putting some extra content on there. Huge thanks to everyone who's been supporting the channel, all the people who have been messaging me discussing staff ideas. It's been great to talk to fellow stick lovers. So hi, hope you enjoyed it, folks. I'll be back with another video as soon as I can.